Hey there everyone, Nubkeks here, and welcome. We are on the public test realm right now, and we're going to be checking out some really big changes that have just come live for the Mage specs here in the Shadowlands. Well, this is actually the pre-patch. So again, this is the public test realm. Public, you guys are of course able to jump on and try it out right now. It is very buggy at the moment. It is crashing. I've been trying to get on for the entire afternoon and we've only just got on, so do bear that in mind. Obviously these changes should be coming to the beta later today, but I wanted to bring these to you as quickly as possible. So what has changed? What are these mega changes that are going to affect every single mage spec? First up, first one, relatively simple one. Where have I put it here on my bars? Here it is. Mirror image. So mirror image, this was initially on the beta coming as a DPS cooldown for every mage spec. A 2-minute cooldown, create 3 copies of the mage for 40 seconds which you cast spells. From the testing that I did, I found that for, the 40 so seconds that it was up, it was doing maybe about 15% of my damage. So let's say on average it was doing like 5 to 10% of your damage. You just press it though every 2 minutes, it would do its thing. It didn't really interact. This has been changed into a defensive cooldown. So number one, they have drastically reduced the damage that these mirror images do. Number two, they now cast Frostbolt, right? They now cast Frostbolt. And number three, as you can read in the tooltip, while your images are active, damage taken is reduced by 20%. But if you take damage, it does make one of those images dissipate. You've got 3 images. There is an internal cooldown on this, so that you can only lose an image every 2 seconds. So at minimum, you will have 6 seconds uptime on that 20% damage, and the images will slowly die off. So if I show this to you here, I'm going to get in combat with this guy. Let's make our images. Here they are, my fake images, and you can see they're casting Frostbolts on this dude. It does not appear, I believe, that this is doing Frostbolt slow. I think it's just visual, and you can see that those images are doing almost no damage whatsoever. It's almost entirely inconsequential, about 1% damage. But I do have the damage reduction while they're up, or at least I believe so. It doesn't appear to be in my buffs or anything right now. But, well, we assume that it's working, I guess. How does this work? Is this good? Is this bad? I think that, on the whole, this is a very substantial buff for all mage specs. I think this is extremely powerful. So compared to mages in BFA, where mages are already an extremely survivable ranged DPS spec, right? You've got your blinks, okay? You have ice block, right? And then each mage spec has their own thing. For arcane, you have greater invisibility. For fire, you have cauterize, it cheat death. For the frost mage, you have cold snap, which would reset your ice block, and your barriers. Of course, barriers. You also have your barriers. So very survivable spec. Now in Shadowlands, on top of that, you have altered time, which is your 1-minute cooldown. You can return in the next 10 seconds to your previous location with the health. You go back to that location with the health you had at the time you cast Alter Time. So that's an additional defensive on a 1-minute cooldown. And now you have a 20% damage reduction up for a minimum of 6 seconds every 2 minutes as well. You have 2 additional defensive cooldowns on top of what was already a survivable spec. That's pretty huge. That is pretty huge. And of course, this has come in before they've done the tuning for the specs. So the fact that it's no longer a damage cooldown shouldn't actually matter when it comes to what the final tuning will be. Of course, we'll see. But yeah, this seems like it should be a major buff. Next up, this one is a massive change, again affecting all mage specs. Rune of Power is now a passive talent. So formerly, Rune of Power had a 45-second recharge, and you could have 2 charges. It had a 1.5 second cast time, so like 1 GCD of cast time. You'd put your rune down, and it would last for 10 seconds, giving you 40% spell power. It is now passive and tied into your major cooldown. So for Arcane Mage, it's tied into Arcane Power. And it's also been buffed to a 15-second duration. So whenever I cast Arcane Power, I will automatically get Rune of Power beneath me, which is going to buff my damage by 40% while I'm in it. Last 15 seconds. Same thing for Fire Mage. It now lasts for 15 seconds and will automatically activate with Combustion. With Frost Mage, same thing. Passively automatically activates whenever they use Icy Veins. So this one's pretty interesting. Bear in mind, Arcane Mage, this is kind of nice for Arcane Mage because there is Arcane Power rank 2. Arcane Power is going to last 15 seconds. Rune of Power is going to give you a 15-second buff. That perfectly overlaps with it. So that is going to be kind of nice for Arcane Mage, although it does desync it from your Touch of the Magi, where you could have Rune of Power lined up with every single Touch of the Magi, which is going to accumulate 25% of the damage it deals to the target, then explode. So you don't have that particular combo, but I think it should still work well for Arcane. For Fire, it's intriguing. Combustion only lasts 10 seconds. Rune of Power lasts for 15. So that's a little bit weird. Of course, that ties into the new Fire gameplay, I suppose, of where you'll kind of build up your big combustion and then look to spread it with your Phoenix Flames after it. So in that case, maybe it's going to help with your Ignite spreading and such. But you, of course, won't be able to sync it up with your Meteors, for example. And things like that. You know, you're only going to be getting this every 2 minutes. So, for example, Meteor had a 45-second cooldown. You could sync up, like, Rune of Power Meteors quite regularly, stuff like that. You're not going to be able to do that as much anymore. It does have synergy with Kindling, I suppose, right? Kindling's going to let you get into combustion more frequently. So that could be nice. That could be a good combo there. But yeah, it's a pretty big change for Fire. And there you are. For Frost, I think this is still relatively unappealing for Frost. Not really, you know, jumping out of my seat for the Frost Mage, like whatever, 15 seconds up during Icy Veins. That's not that good. Icy Veins is a 3-minute cooldown, and Frost is nowhere near as bursty. Icy Veins just gives you some haste. So, sorry, this is PTR. I don't have my stuff set up like I did on the beta. Where is Icy Veins? Icy Veins. There it is. So it's a 3-minute cooldown. 30% haste for 20 seconds. Is this going to be as good as just going Incanter's Flow? I doubt it. This seems like a nerf overall, so there you are. And certainly if you go for Thermal Void, where your Icy Veins is then going to become... Icy Veins over here is going to be a 30-second cooldown. And it's going to be extended even more. Is 15 seconds at the start of it going to matter that much? I don't really think so. So looks like a big nerf for Frost, but you really weren't using the talent much. For Fire, I think it's certainly questionable. I think overall it is probably a nerf, though maybe ties into the Phoenix Flame spreading. For Arcane, I think it's still going to be a viable talent. Certainly you're opening up Incanter's Flow or the new Focus Magic for those Mage specs more, though. So an interesting tweak there. Okay, let me actually cover the Fire changes first. There's nothing else to Frost, just the generic Mage stuff. For Fire, then, we have a couple of changes. First of all, obviously tying into what was already there with the Ignite spreading. Phoenix Flames, which is your Ignite spreading ability, this is no longer a guaranteed critical hit, but they have upped the damage that it does. So it's still useful in the sense that during your combustion, it's still an instant cast ability, and during combustion, it's of course an instant crit, so you can still use it. You can still use it as a fairly hard-hitting ability. Like for example, Scorch only does 91 damage. This hits harder than Scorch, significantly harder than Scorch. It hits harder than Fireball as well. So this is something that you can throw into your combustion to get a bigger combustion. That's fine, and then just use the charge, save one charge for after combustion or for the very end of combustion to then spread the big final combusted Ignite onto the targets that you want it to. I think, again, maybe the more interesting thing about this is that when you're out of combustion, right, when you're just doing your stuff, whereas when it was a guaranteed crit, you could certainly be tempted to turn it, like, just use it to proc, like, to get more procs on your Flame Strike. That no longer works, right, because it's not a guaranteed crit. You're no longer using it with Fire Blast to just chain Flame Strikes and stuff. It pushes you much more towards thinking about this as a tool for spreading Ignite. Not a big fan of this change, to be honest with you. I'd rather have it just be a free crit spell and have Ignite spread automatically. I think that the Ignite change, I've already said this, is an overreaction to Fire Mage's overpoweredness in patch 8.3. But I don't think it was a massive issue apart from that. But anyway, that's what it's doing. We also have a couple of talent tweaks for Fire. Alexstrasza's Fury has been buffed again. This now makes Dragon Breath always critically hit and do 50% critical hit increased damage. So instead of doing 300 damage, my Alexstrasza's Fury with this is going to... I don't think it worked. Didn't look like it crit there. No, it just hit. No, it did critically hit. It did 700 damage. So, I mean, that is an AoE. It appears to be uncapped. So, I mean, could be cool. And it will, of course, increase the damage of your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike by 35%. So, maybe good for some additional AoE damage. And then on top of that, we also have a new talent as well. This is called From the Ashes. So this was just an empty slot after they moved Phoenix Flames baseline. But From the Ashes, this now is a passive talent that increases your mastery by 2% for each charge of Phoenix Flames off the cooldown. And your direct damage critical strikes will reduce the cooldown of Phoenix Flames by 1 second. So this is certainly an interesting one. Obviously, you have to give up Flame On, which definitely feels bad, right? Which reduces your Fire Blast cooldown and lets you have more Fire Blast charges. So you're giving up a very potent talent for that. This one is a bit odd. It kind of encourages you not to spend your Phoenix Flames, but it does give you a substantial enough mastery buff. Like right now, I've got 20% mastery. If I go for Flame On, I'm down to 15%. This is just an item level 77 gear. Like, this is not a geared mage at all. Like, this is just a mage I leveled up to 120, and then it's just been sat there. So it's a good chunk of mastery. It's a weird one. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this. Like, I feel like the optimal gameplay is that, when you're going around doing your dungeon stuff, you're mostly going to just be doing your core rotation, and it's going to feel worse without Flame On, and you're going to be sat at 2 charges of Phoenix Flames, and you're just going to keep 1 charge rolling, and then use maybe 1 or 2 charges, maybe go down to 1 charge to spread your better mastery. It's weird. I don't know. It's weird. So yeah, anyway, those are the changes to Fire. Not too great, but good news. Arcane has some really good stuff. Let's check out the changes to Arcane. Where to start with this? So, lots of tweaks here. Please do check out my Arcane video if you want more in detail stuff about this. First thing first, right? First things first. Arcane Power in BFA is a 1.5 minute cooldown. On the Shadowlands beta, up until this point, they doubled that to a 3-minute cooldown. Now they've brought it to a 2-minute cooldown. So Arcane Power is now a 2-minute cooldown. And of course, once again, you do have that leveling perk that makes it last for an additional 5 seconds. So it's a 15-second buff now every 2 minutes. So that's definitely, obviously, it's a positive thing, I guess. For Arcane Mages, you're now going to be bursting every 2 minutes. On top of that, Charged Up, which was a former talent here, is gone. Charged Up was a 45-second cooldown. On the GCD, activate it to gain 4 arcane charges. That has just been baked into the new Touch of the Magi active spell, right? So, this, again, it was coming from the beta, but it's now just better. Now it has Charge Up baked in. You put the Touch of the Magi on the target, 45-second cooldown, 1.5-second cast, and it will accumulate 25% the damage you deal to the target for 8 seconds, and then explode for that amount of arcane damage to the target, reduce damage to all other nearby enemies. And again, this will now automatically generate those arcane charges. So when you consider that Rune of Power is passive, like to get into my rotation, and Mirror Images is now a defensive cooldown, I'm just gonna go into the fight. I'm gonna Arcane Power. I'm gonna Touch of the Magi. I can actually Presence of Mind, and I'm just gonna start blasting. And that's it. We're into our rotation already, way faster than what it was before, responding to people's concerns about the burst CDs. So there you are. Like, so for example here, like you see Touch of the Magi is doing a good chunk of damage, and yeah, so interesting one there. Touch of the Magi, it just works better now. Kind of, so you can just go into conserve phase and dump with Arcane Barrage before you go into touch, right? We have some talent tweaks as well, right? Some talent tweaks as well. First up, you no longer have the what was it called? It was the one that made your Prismatic Barrier have no cooldown but take your mana. That's just gone. That's gone. We have a new talent though called Master of Time, bringing you back to the displacement effect from BFA. This reduces the cooldown of Alter Time from 1 minute to 30 seconds, and Alter Time will reset the cooldown of Blink when you return to your original location. So that's obviously extremely powerful. Obviously you don't have Shimmer if you're running with this, but having Alter Time on a 30-second cooldown and giving it the resets of Blink, that could be amazing. I'll leave it up to you to think of the plays that you can make with this. Kind of disgusting in PvP. And again, bringing that displacement flavor back to the Arcane Mage. I think it's fun that Arcane Mage has a talent for Alter Time, whereas the other mages don't. That's my opinion. I already talked about the Rune of Power change. It's absolutely massive. Could certainly bring in Cantor's Flow as a more relevant thing. You kind of have that choice, right? You kind of go, well, here's the thing, right? So Rune of Power, you kind of want to, I think if you're taking Rune of Power, so it automatically goes to every Arcane Power. Overpowered becomes very attractive, so you kind of go with that and have just every 2 minutes massive frickin' burst damage. Or you could go with Incanter's Flow and the now buffed time anomaly for more consistent damage. What is this now buffed time anomaly, you do ask? So this used to have proc 3 random effects. It still has the same effects before. It can give you 8 seconds of arcane power, which actually has happened here to me randomly. It can give you 1 second of evocation. It used to, in BFA, randomly give you 4 arcane charges, which could be kind of annoying, right? Because it could happen mid-spell cast, and you could end up in a situation where it would just, you know, you're almost out of mana, and you're trying to just dump all your charges to regen your mana. It would proc the 4 charges, and then suddenly, like, your Arcane Blast spell would fail because you didn't have enough mana to cast it anymore, because the cost increased with the charges. That has now been replaced by gaining Time Warp for 6 seconds instead. Pretty good. Just randomly gain 30% haste. In fact, there it is. That's pretty nice. That's a much better perk than randomly gaining charges. I mean, like, if you gain charges when you're at 2 charges, it didn't feel so good. Getting Time Warp always feels pretty nice, and you can make plays with that. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting one there. Pretty nice. Nice buff to Time Anomaly. It was already pretty close with Overpowered, I believe, in terms of single target sims. So this should make it a bit more usable, feel a bit better. And, yeah, it's an interesting change. In place of Charged Up, actually, let me cover level 35. Level 35 has seen a tweak. Nether Tempest has moved there, and Supernova's moved down here. But first up, Resonance has been buffed. This used to give you 10% increased damage per target hit with Arcane Barrage. It's now 15% increased damage per target hit with Arcane Barrage. So a potent AoE thing. Arcane Barrage obviously does pretty good damage. It does more damage and hits 1 additional target per arcane charge. This is going to be a good AoE, consistent AoE damage dealer. We have a new talent, Arcane Echo, in place of Charged Up. Direct damage you deal to enemies affected by Touch of the Magi causes an explosion that does 65 arcane damage to 8 nearby enemies. So I imagine this actually works better. Let me see if I can get clear casting. So he did it right there. You can see the damage is minuscule in terms of single target, but this is obviously supposed to be an AoE thing. So we have 1 stack of clear casting. Okay, that's probably fine for us to do what we want to do here. Let's see, does this trigger more if I go into it with clear casting? It probably should. Yeah, that hit 5 times there, so that hit more, I'm pretty sure. So that's a nice little combo, perhaps, with clear casting. Certainly, if you look at amplification as well, when clear cast Arcane Missiles fires more missiles, this could become a very powerful cleave option if you save up your clear casting charges to go into your Touch of the Magi window. You could get maybe a lot of AoE damage out of that. Interesting. And then Nether Tempest is on this tier as well, so Nether Tempest. There's a Nether Tempest. It has no cooldown. You place a Nether Tempest on the target, which does arcane damage over 12 seconds to the target and nearby enemies within 10 yards, so it's just sort of pulsing some AoE damage. You can only put it on 1 target at a time, and it does less damage to secondary targets. The damage does get increased per arcane charge, so you want to do this when you've got lots of arcane charges. But yeah, you kind of have that option. So Nether Tempest may actually be the best option in single target, which could be a bit clunky. That could feel a little bit bad. It's just something to manage every 12 seconds. Maybe you'll like that, maybe not. I'll leave that up to you. Arcane Echo is now going to tie into Touch of the Magi. Probably not great in single target, and good synergy with Missile build, I would think. Or then Resonance for kind of that consistent AoE damage. So that's the new level 35 row. Quite a change there. And then at level 45, we also have some changes. Reverberate has been buffed. If Arcane Explosion hits at least 3 targets, it has a 50% chance to generate an arcane charge. So this is a very good thing, but pretty much purely in AoE. Certainly it's got good synergy with these two, right? Reverberate, so I've got, you know, a chance to get extra arcane charges, and then my Arcane Barrage is going to do more damage. So just get more barrages out. The barrages do more damage. Nice synergy there. Good for AoE. Supernova is here on this tier. It does terrible damage. 25-second cooldown. This is really a CC ability, right? There's a mild bit of damage, but it's all about knocking the target and all enemies within 8 yards of that target up in the air as just an AoE control thing. Not sure if this one's going to work too well. The big thing on this row, I think, is very much now looking like Enlightened. Enlightened, coming from the Equipoise Azurite trait. Arcane damage dealt while above 70% mana is increased by 8%, and mana regen below 70% is increased by 20%. This seems like kind of a no-brainer, I feel, right now, and you're going to be, I think, planning you're going to be very much in a conserve phase coming up to each Touch of the Magi, like dumping your stuff, because, well, Touch of the Magi is going to automatically give you those arcane charges, so you're fully ready to go every time Touch of the Magi is up, and you're ready to blast. So that's one of my concerns, is that Enlightenment seems a little bit too powerful. So that is certainly a concern compared to these other ones, which this is just AoE control. Sorry, this is just control. It's just CC. This one is pure AoE, useless in single target. This is good in single target. It's good in AoE. So it seems like a bit too cookie cutter right now. And then, yeah, I already covered level 50. You know, overpowered is sort of nerfed in the sense that Arcane Power is 2-minute cooldown rather than 130. But we'll see what the tuning ends up being. Arcane Orb, which is, again, for AoE. And then Time Anomaly getting buffed, which is nice. So lots of changes there to the Arcane Mage. Let me know what you think. I certainly think it does flow a lot more smoothly without those GCD things. I will say I am going to miss the old like Rune of Power into Touch of the Magi. I find that kind of satisfying. You know, that you could plan to have your Rune of Power down, kind of throw down the Rune of Power, then throw Touch of the Magi. That felt kind of nice. So I'm a little bit sad, actually, that interaction is now gone, and it's more just a purely Arcane Power thing. But yeah, certainly charged up going to Touch of the Magi is a huge perk. Arcane Power more often, that's a huge perk. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, let me know what you think. Lots of stuff covered there. I'm curious to see the comments. And for me, Mage is looking, I think, really nice this expansion. I'm loving the look of Arcane overall. So, yeah, I'll probably bring you, again, even more videos on this, pending whatever additional changes they do. I certainly think Arcane is looking... It's one of the top competitors for being my main spec in Shadowlands. So, there you are. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.